All right, everyone, back for another episode of Shtajio's vlog. I am Henry Thurlow.
I'm Arthell Isom.
Arthell Isom, he's back, the CEO of Shtajio. We haven't seen you in like I don't know how many episodes, 3, 4, 5.
I know, man. It's been a little while. Like, and I missed all of you sitting here chatting with Henry and stuff, you know. But I got to watch the vlogs that you did with Dante and some of our staff.
Steven cool. and Rajan jumped in on a recent one, so it did give a little bit of the spotlight to some other members.
Yeah, which is really cool, you know.
So this is actually episode 50. We're a 50 episode vlog series.
That's a lot of vlogs, man. Like, I think, you know.
Yeah,
even though we skip out sometimes, we still got to that number, 50.
Yeah, we didn't keep it up every single week perfectly, but for those who don't know, although I'm not sure why you're watching if you don't know at all, but Shtajio anime studio here in Tokyo, Japan. We're actually at a new studio space. So longtime viewers will be like, "Where are you guys?"
Right. The table is missing and all that.
No table. It's a totally different studio. We still have the other one, but this is an addition to Shtajio. It's getting bigger,
We're expanding
bigger and bigger.
Bit.
We have to do a walkthrough of this one in the upcoming.
Yeah.
We're still setting up, so for right now, the lighting's not perfect and everything, but you know, it's all good. So this episode finally got you back, though. I was thinking this. The topic will be, what have you learned since the first vlog episode?
Oh, okay.
It doesn't have to be specifically like, oh no, did I learn that a little bit before the first vlog or after the first? But like, you know, what I want to show is that we are also constantly just learning, and it's not like, oh, we're just 100% finished professionals that don't evolve and, you know, learn new things as we go. You know, even as we're sitting here giving advice and talking about the industry as insiders, from week to week, I'll do an animation sequence and be like, I learned something new. I didn't know I was supposed to do it that way. You know, that's crazy.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, that is totally true. I did a live earlier today. You know,
Instagram?
Instagram live. I've been trying to do some more of those things, and we talked about that, like that life and your process and production and you know, just working in the industry, you should be evolving essentially, right? Like always changing, always growing, and so it's a perfect topic for that, you know, because like we don't know everything, and any person who says they know everything is an idiot, because nobody knows everything. And you know, and so essentially you're constantly learning, and for all those who want to get in the industry or you want to get in any profession, right? That is something I believe in, is that we should always feel that we're going to learn something new, and we should always be open to it. So like, you know, just from our first vlog, even from when our doors open, when we actually got our first official studio, the one that was in our old vlog, or in the previous vlogs, even from that day to now, we've learned a lot, you know, and honestly learning just how to.
I think with every project, to be honest, you should learn something.
Yeah.
Right? That's why a 20-year veteran of an industry is more in demand than a 2-year veteran, and isn't as in demand as the 40-year veteran, right? Because it's assumed that with every project or every couple projects, something new will click, and the amount of just resources that someone has stored up, it, you know, comes with time, right?
It's true. All the information that you get, and I mean, even the production we're working on now, there's like pipeline processes, like new pipeline processes that we've learned and how to deal with, and issues that happen along with, like, not only because all productions, there's no such thing as a smooth production, you know, like everything, there's always going to be hiccups in the pipeline or in the process, or you know, and so, but you learn from those things. Yeah,
there's so many people working on productions that even if you think you have the smoothest pipeline ever, someone is going to show up with a problem someday, and that it doesn't even necessarily mean their fault. It just means it might be their fault. Someone might mess up, or they just come at you with a problem that was unexpected. There's too many people working on these projects. That's not going to happen. Different people will come up with different unexpected things at any given time, and then you need to adjust or learn or you know, problem solve at the moment.
Different, like new people, new staff, new everything, and then also just new processes, right? Like we're a digital studio, although some of our artists are traditional, but even that, right? Like new software, new processes, new
Yes.
everything, and so all those things bring with them their complexities, and so where, yeah, you're like, okay, how do we incorporate this new software or a new process into our, you know, ever evolving system? But yeah, and then like Henry said, that's what makes the 20-year veteran more, you know, sought after, and then the 40-year veteran more sought after, because as you experience those issues, when that problem arises again, instead of you spending a few days or a week trying to solve that issue, you already know you already know the answer, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, like I had this problem 3 projects ago.
Yeah.
The same exact. Oh, okay, but
I know exactly
now,
what I did to fix it.
Yeah, we know exactly what
So
to do.
the first time it happened, it was a week-long problem, but
Yeah.
now you just fixed it in 45 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you know, then that's why you make the big bucks, right? Like people say, oh, but you only did it. It only took you like 10 minutes. It's like no. It took me 10 minutes to do it, but it took me about like, you know, a year or something to learn how to do this in 10 minutes, right? So yeah.
I was brainstorming different things, so I wrote like a quick list. Some of these will maybe seem vague, but well, here. So just in general, since the first VOG episode, like how am I different? Number one, I'm way faster. I just learned to be faster at certain things. I learned more about what my strengths and weaknesses are by seeing what has recently not needed to be fixed or retaken versus what uniquely comes back often as retakes, right? So that's kind of vague. That's not a specific lesson, but figuring out what your unique problems are is really important. And I think I'm getting better at that, where it's like, oh, that's my problem area. I need to focus on that more, right? So that's going to be different for everybody. More confidence to add in specifically other studios' productions, the timing that I want. So when I was coming up in the anime industry, I was working at some studios which were like, this is the exact way to do it, like don't go past this. Your Cartoon Network experience isn't that valuable because we do things differently here in Japan. Maybe someday it will be because you know how to move some things differently, but right now you got to learn it the right way, right? And so head turns, it's this many frames, it takes this long, you put this on 3s, right? And I never wanted to do some of the things that they told me to do. I wanted to do that my own way, but I noticed early on in my career, and early on meaning just like a handful of years ago, that if I tried that, they would come back like, no, we told you to do it a certain way, now do it the certain way, right? But I'm noticing now maybe I'm starting to enter the realm of like, they said one day maybe that'll come into play. And now, especially with my recent like One Piece work, like I'm testing using my own timing of like tons of 1s and 2s at certain types of motions, and it's not being retaken, right? And so it's like having more confidence to say, I think now in my career I can do this, and I couldn't do this up until this point. That's something that, I realize on a month-to-month basis, like where I can take the sequences. General just improvements in my skill and stuff. I don't keep a sketchbook like you want me to. Arthell is all about keeping the sketchbooks, and honestly, I said I was going to, but I don't. That's bad, Henry. But even with that, just so much work constantly and having to finish the things, I notice I can just recognize what types of perspective lines a sequence needs. I'm not perfect yet, especially in comparison to an art director like yourself, but I just notice it clicks a little bit faster. I also, this will get, on the business end, 2 things. One, personally, I'm recognizing what types of clients I work with best and which I don't, and what problems are going to occur in the production, given even just our first few meetings, right? Like this is a person that I work with perfectly. I know that we're just going to vibe the whole time and it's going to work. Other times, this isn't going to work. Now I need to prep certain things. I need to either prep, am I going to sacrifice a lot of what I want along the way? Do I want to fight? Do I want to, et cetera, et cetera? But it's knowing what to expect because of the experience of like, working with people. And then either picking my jobs, or if I can't pick my job, at least be prepared mentally for what's coming and what sacrifices I will have to make along the way, right? And you know, even just a year and a half, 2 years ago, I couldn't do that as good as I could now. That doesn't mean I don't have a million miles to still go, but it's slowly understanding certain things, right? Also on the business end, and you'll like this one, this has to do with a vlog episode we did a few weeks ago. I have a slight, I wrote the note as sympathy for the devil, which is like, I have slight more sympathy or understanding of the complexity that is the industry, and it's not so easy to fix. I used to be, you know, the studios just need to pay more money. The studios paid everyone quadruple what they're paying, all the animators are happy, and they'd still make the same profit. That's too simplistic, and I've learned that working, you know, on the business end a bit of a studio, and seeing, you know, so the wages do need to go up. They absolutely do in your general anime industry. Studio. The vlog a few weeks ago, I explained that too. But the difficulties come from two things. It's not just the studio that just magically needs to pay more. There also needs to be cooperation on two other ends. Number one, the production committees or the clients that fund the projects truly need to start funding the projects better, particularly for your just general Japanese anime, TV series and things like that. Those production committees do not give the right types of contracts and right type of pay often to the studios to get the truly world-class quality that they're asking for, right? And so then what ends up happening is the studios work beyond what they should be working to deliver, you know, based on the price that they get. For this price, we should deliver this. But what they end up doing is they do try to make unbelievably amazing action sequences and things. But frankly speaking, they don't have the time and the money to do that. So what happens is people are underpaid and overworked for that super high quality, and the perception is the studio overworked these genius artists, right?
That's interesting.
But it's not 100% the studio's fault. The studio was, to be honest, just trying. They were putting in more of an effort than perhaps they should have been, but at the same time, you can't blame them. They want to make amazing things, right? And the other end is the artists themselves. So I do 100% agree that the prices need to go up. The bare bones, super cheap Ganga prices and things are unsustainable, right? I have been shocked being on this end of the production, seeing some animators not hand in professional things as they should, even when we offer better than industry standard rates. So one thing when we started, we're like, you know, even though we're a small studio and it's going to be hard for us, like, let's even do better, right? Than the average, quite a bit better. And
they're like paying
quite a lot better, like, a lot better. We paid like better than anime film projects for even just short things that we make, right? And yet, sometimes it's great, and the animator hands in a wonderful thing, and we're all happy that the process worked well. And other times, despite the high pay, it's stick figure level terribleness. It's so bad that I can't even believe, number one, we're paying them anything, and number two, our effort was for nothing, essentially. You know what I mean? Is how I felt at certain points. And so, yes, the studios need to fix certain things, and some studios more than others. But I recognize it is far more nuanced now, and from both directions, both from the freelancers coming into it and from the true clients themselves and the production committees. There must be cooperation for this industry to be fixed. And I didn't know that at the beginning of of our vlog series, not as much as I do now. I learned that over the last year and a half from the various projects that we worked on.
Yeah, I know. I think that's interesting. It's good. It's interesting to hear that, you know, your perspective on that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think even from the beginning, I've always kind of had my own view on freelance people. You know? And so it's interesting to hear, like, now that you're starting to kind of see why I feel the way I feel about those things. But and then like, and as we were building this business and like kind of just going through the different, you know, trials and tribulations of working with people, you know, even now there's things that we learn, because that is such a nuanced issue, right? Like, we're always thinking, I mean, I guess in order to build a business, like, we have to constantly think about overhead and money and budget and like, you know, we don't, like perception, like you said, like, you know, it's such a nuanced thing, but people on the outside see it as like, oh, you're just overworking people or you're underpaying people, but there's so much more to it, and even, yeah, like I think I've learned, you know, I don't know if I've learned as much as you are, maybe we're learning the same thing, or, but, you know, I definitely have some the same experience, like growth experiences that you just discussed.
Well, I know you've learned too, because sometimes even you'd be the person to contact someone, and then the delivery would be like, "Oh my goodness."
Yeah. Just like what is going on?
So different things to plan for. The last comment I had, and then I'll leave it to you to whatever you want, is from a director's perspective. As a director, particularly in Enshutsu, in Japanese anime, episode director or technical director. The full extent to which you must try to visualize the sequence done, even from the rough animation stage, is quite heavy. It's a very demanding position, far more than I mean, I knew it was as demanding as it comes. And when it's... Sometimes I hit the nail on the head, and I think I did in like the Sturgill Simpson thing we did. But that's because I was just like the absolute mastermind of that one portion of it. But in other projects, things to look out for to make sure you steer the sequence in a direction right from the get-go. I know that both of us didn't recognize the amount, because both of us, when we take on that position to different extents, are always surprised later on when certain things aren't working. For you, often animation related. Later on, we'll move some of these background characters, right? Or during the secondary key animation phase, we can add additional motion, right? But realistically, it wasn't that simple. And then for me, the full extent of this is the light source, this is the composition, these are the exact characters in the exact position, every layer working, and assuming it doesn't change, is this absolutely the correct size of them and the correct expression on them? Where exactly is their meisen in Japanese, like the eye line? Because certain things I assumed, for example, to give a very specific example, is if in the rough animation everything's moving fine, and this character is looking at that character and then generally looks over here to look at that character to talk. I mean, even if it's scribbly and rough at the beginning, if it's working, I'm sure it'll work at the end and everyone will be looking at the right person. I didn't realize that the animation director could potentially envision the characters looking at a different person than I intended, because it seemed so clear in the rough animation and the final drawing seemed so far off. But so to early on as possible, literally just stack up that rough animation with a giant amount of notes, including this is the exact light source, that's the exact amount of shadows, this person's head is just ever so slightly bigger, and they start looking exactly here, and then you draw arrows exactly to that, and then end exactly here, slightly up, slightly down, right? Things like that. The extent of notes that should even be introduced very early on is something that I've only learned over the last year and a half. And I'm still learning, but that's super specific, but that just hopefully gives people an example of like very specific things that I realized even a year and a half ago I wasn't doing right.
Yeah,
kick it over to you.
Okay. No, yeah, I think some of the things that you mentioned probably the same. I think that is what I've learned is how much we don't know, right? Like that's the difficult thing. It's like, yeah. So as like, you know, as we're kind of doing this, and then of course our fans are like, oh, like asking us for advice and things, but. You know, there are things that we kind of, I think there's knowledge and information that we take for granted, right? And then even like you said, with certain scenes and cuts and things, we see it one way, and but then what we get later is totally different. And so as a director and like as a producer and, you know, studio head and all that kind of stuff, the thing that I'm always learning is just that I don't know anything. And like, there's just so much information that I don't know, you know, and I'm just like, man, like constantly, like how do I fill that information? Like how do I get that information in a smoother, fast enough process that it doesn't, you know, so that the production doesn't get interrupted. And so every, you know, just working on each production, I think that's the things that I focus on the most is like what I don't know, because I'm always constantly worried about that, you know, and like, okay, well, how do we make sure this goes smoothly, and trying to, you know, how can we, you know, how can we get the production going without it being just interrupted, right? And then that what we get at the end, and you know, and like something that I've said in other vlogs and things when people ask like, oh, like what's your favorite one? Did you guys work on something? So, and I've always answered the same. My answer is still the same. Like, right, that I don't have a favorite one yet. But this is probably the crux of that problem, is that like because they don't know enough. Like I feel like there's just so much that I don't know yet, that like what I envision right from the beginning isn't what we get at the end.
Yeah.
And so like that I think as we, you know, the goal is to have that, right? Like the goal is that what you envision from the beginning is what you get, right? But because there's so many people who are involved, and I'm sure this is, I mean, I don't know, who knows, like I think with all productions, like what you get on the big screen is probably different, you know, than what the story, and it usually is, right? You look at the first script, and you look at the storyboard, which is the reason why they have like the feature film script and then the actual screenplay that the writer wrote, and it's like they're two different things. And the same with like you look at the storyboards and then you look at the actual film, and it's different, you know. But and I think that, you know, yeah, like the idea of like how much information, although like Henry used to always say I'm micromanaging, but now you realize like that like it's really like as an institute too, right? Like you have to give so much notes, but it's not that you're, I realize that it's that there's so much missing that the people around don't know.
I think another aspect, just to add, I'm sorry, not to cut you off, I'll send it back to you in a second, but it is also take into account what you're making and your specific team. So if I'm making something that I know I can handle, perhaps then I can handle it my way. But if I look at the team and even if I'm unsure about their skill level, I shouldn't assume skill levels, right? And the assumption of I'm sure they'll hand me a background that fits with the character it sometimes can work. It depends on your team. So again, knowing what you don't know, you know, recognizing what you don't know. Another thing is just, okay, I recognize I know all the details about this project, I'm going to do it Henry's way. But I recognize I don't know all the details about this production. I need to play certain things safe, right? And so, and what safe might mean is I need 1 billion notes here.
Yeah, exactly. And so that I think that's something that you definitely, I think, learned, you know, or I don't know if you like learning what you don't know, right? If that even counts as learning anything, but like but I think that is what learning is, right? Like it's you can't learn what you know, right? And like, so it's like all the information that you don't know is what you're constantly searching for, and I think, and so that's a very interesting experience, and even as if I speak more specifically about project roles and things, and so like as an art director. Something that I realized on this production that we're working on right now is that it's so easy to get carried away with the process that sometimes you forget the role itself too, which is and what I mean, like I guess to be more specific with that is like, okay, so an art director's role, right, is to first and foremost is to make sure you deliver what the director had in mind, right? And that's what's on the screen. But also it's to make sure that there are the rules, the foundation of what an art director is like, you know, cinematography and lighting and all those things you also have to pay attention to. And I think as an art director, it's easy to kind of get too carried away in one section where you're like, oh wait, the director wants to see this, this, and this. Okay, check. What's supposed to be in the scene, you know, here's a building is here, a door is here, and the dog, whatever, right? Like, oh, cool, everything's there, all the elements are there. But then you forget what you're supposed to do, which is like, wait, is the lighting working? Does this camera angle really show what it's supposed to show? Are all the shadows where they're supposed to be? Or, you know, do this? So all that information also should be going through your head constantly from the beginning, and then you should kind of relay that to the background artists and also to the animators, right? So the animators, like Henry said, like there's things that you think is common sense, right? Like for example, if the people are standing, this is just a bad example, but like, you know, but whatever, like, okay, so we're in this room, the light is right above us. It's common sense that the light is right above us. It means that all the shadows are going to be below, right? Because the light is on top. But sometimes the animators don't consider that, right? Because in animation, they cheat lighting, right? They cheat shadow a lot. And that usually works for most of the sequences, right? It's the easiest way to get through without having to, because you, one of the rules in animation, right? Like you simplify things, right? That's why anime has like fake shadows and fake light. And that usually works for most sequences. But it doesn't work when there's a very specific light source, right? So if you have a very specific light source, but then you're cheating the lighting, when you, our subconscious notices that right away, but it's already finished. And then you look at it and you're like, wait, but it's common sense that the light source is right here. There's only one light source. Why are all the characters? But now I realize that, but as an art director, that information, we can't assume it. And like, so that aspect of our job. So not only as an art director, but in all the positions, right?
It's funny. I was going to say, we learned almost the exact same thing. Enshutsu and Bijutsu Kanto, art director and technical director, right? Yeah. Which is like just the scope. It was different details, but just the scope of what you must recognize from the get-go, right? So like I was always focusing on that, and that was going to result in the characters moving nicely and in a good composition. But what I needed to be looking at is that from the very beginning. And it seems like the same. It's like you're looking at like this perspective in that drawing, what a great background. And the light source is also generally right. But what you needed to look at was this, which is like all those other 20 things that could have gone wrong, you should avoid them from step one.
Yeah. And I think like, and so it's like, how do we get that right? So of course communication and making sure that everyone understands that. So I feel that's something else we learned is that communication is super important, you know, and just in development of everything, you know, from building a business to creating a production. Like, you know, so there's so much, like, you know, I think like Henry had his list, you know, I can kind of just go on and on and on about the things, but I think that because the two different roles, right, like both in business, if I was like, you know, how do we, something that I thought was interesting that I guess kind of so we talked about art a little bit, and so from the business side, something that I learned is, you know, when you work with different clients, their requirements are different, and not only when it comes to just, you know, we want these kind of characters. I don't mean that. I don't mean like superficial things like that. It's actually the structure, the required structure that they need in order to work with them is different, and like that's a whole other process. And so I've been learning about like, you know, just security and, you know, and you know, because of course we have lots of fans, like, you know, our fans, like, and fans of anime and fans of films want information, and it's not a malicious thing, right? But, you know, that's where you got leaks, right? And because people just get a bit of information they want to share with people, and I understand that. But of course, like, you know, as creators and stuff, we want to surprise you guys. We want you guys to be happy. We don't want you. We try our best not to have spoilers get out there. So, you know, so that when you guys watch the film for the first time, you're just as surprised and taken back that as we hope you would be, you know, when you watch this as you know, fresh eyes. But, and so, you know, there's things that you need to have, and some studios require that those securities are in place prior to taking work with them, you know, and so you know, so learning about insurances and all these things that are required for a corporation to function, you know, just simple things that I think, like, you know, how do you keep the flow of information going only in one direction, you know, and how can we set up systems that aid that? So, you know, like there's, so constantly learning a lot of stuff, but that.
All right. Well, I think we hit this topic from a whole bunch of different sides. Yeah. Well, good. I'm good. I think this was a good episode.
Hope so. I hope you guys learned something, and glad to be back with you guys for a little bit. And please drop your comments and questions down below if you have any questions specifically about things that we asked or talked about during this episode.
All right. So, see you guys next time.
All right,
Shtajio.
Peace.
Bye.